Everything points towards Wilfried Nancy becoming the 20th man to take the Celtic manager's job on a permanent basis, but is it the right move at this moment in time? Could his appointment be a masterstroke, or is there too much risk involved in giving the big job to a man who's never coached outside MLS? James, your response to that?
Maybe is the response. I like him as a character. He seems strong-willed, has a philosophy, an actual philosophy. The manager's appointment isn't the problem, it's the appointers of the appointee that are the problem, and the structure that he's going to come into. All of a sudden, we're now told that Tisdale, who's been doing nothing and nothing, is this genius who has all the structure ready to go just because he happened to be in the building. But, where's his experience of running a data analytical football club that is now just going to happen overnight and slot the manager in, it's all going to be dead easy? The questions aren't in the gaffer, it's what's behind it.
How do we know Paul Tisdale's been doing nothing?
Because it's the same reason we don't know Michael Nichols has been doing nothing, because nobody ever tells you anything.
True.
He need to talk, no communication.
He could have been doing all sorts behind the scenes. He could have been building for this very moment. He could have come into Celtic. So the whole chat about Paul Tisdale is that he's a Desmond guy. I think initially we all thought he was a Rodgers guy. And maybe he's been building towards this new structure that we could see.
Is that where Balakwisha came from then?
I don't know. But just in terms of manager stuff, maybe he's been brought in to revamp that operation.
It seems strange though. Why would you bring him in, do nothing with it, and have Rodgers as the manager, and then all of a sudden, if you're going to bring him in and do that, you need to ship Rodgers out straight away.
Yeah. Do you though? Because, Hearts aren't doing that. I'll tell you something, Derek McInnes isn't the long-term guy at Hearts, and they're basically saying he's fine till he's not fine. The moment he messes up, he'll be gone, and there'll be a proper Tony Bloom, Jamestown analytics guy in the building, because it's not Derek McInnes right now. And in the same way that it might be that when Tisdale came in, Rodgers wasn't ever going to be the long term. Maybe Desmond knew that, maybe Tisdale knew that, and they've thought, come in, find out the lie of the land, and then whenever Rodgers moves on, end of season 3, start of season 3, we can do something different.
So is this all manufactured then, that Rodgers was essentially strained until he couldn't take it no more and left?
Not necessarily. I think they would maybe have hoped that he was going to behave and win the league and head off after season 3, and then you appoint your guy, Wilfried Nancy or otherwise.
If you had that guy, Tisdale, doing all our work, why did we sign such a bag of nonsense over the last, he's been here for 3 transfer windows?
No, not as long as that.
It was summer, not there.
Summer last year.
So, let's see. So just there? He's been there longer,
Should really check these things.
We should. No, it's definitely, it's 3 windows. It's 3 windows.
I think it's 3 windows.
You could debate what impact he had in that first summer window.
Or has he been told, are you saying, listen, don't worry about that just now, just get your stuff together and make it happen when it's meant to happen?
I just wonder if this was always the bigger picture. So Nancy seems to be more head coach than manager.
Yeah.
Martin O'Neill's a manager, Brendan Rodgers is a manager. Nancy seems to be a head coach type, and I just wonder if this might be part of something moving forward. Maybe we'll find out at the AGM. We're going to talk about the AGM a bit later on.
I'll tell you nothing of that, man.
Maybe so. There's a suggestion, though, that this could be a revamping of how Celtic do things.
Well, it must happen. It's not even a hope it happens. It must happen, because if we're at the point where we are deciding that Brendan Rodgers isn't the man a year and a half earlier and getting ready for him to spit the dummy, probably through our fault in that sense, and what the board's decisions being in terms of the transfers, what's been offered to him in terms of player profiles, that it's came to the point of, right, Paul Tisdale's turned around and said, I'm good to go, he's not doing great, let's push the button and move ahead. Then there better be a plan in place, because it can't be
strange way of doing business.
A very I see where you're coming from in terms of maybe starting to bring his kind of people in, and maybe he just wasn't allowed to do that with Rodgers there, and Rodgers has got his team. I think what we've always kind of seen or wanted with Celtic is that more of a structure of a director of football, more of a more rigid scouting network that have the analytics at their disposal and operate on the basis of club signings, no, manager signings and philosophy of the manager signings, yes. Because you might have a club philosophy, absolutely, but the player trading models that every club seem to use in this day and age all work around their managers, in the sense of, we will try and bring players in that we can sell on down the line. Most clubs are operating in that basis. I think Brendan Rodgers has always operated in that basis. I can't remember any signings of late where it's been over 30s or anything like that. So I I know what you mean in terms of maybe this is him getting the go-ahead to do what he wants to do. Do I necessarily think that Celtic would forward plan like that? Probably not.
Aye, sorry, I think you've misunderstood me to a point. I'm not saying he came in a year and a bit ago with this to be the plan.
No.
But when he comes in at first, I believe there will have been a bit of an audit carried out by Paul Tisdale, head of football operations, right? So you come in there and you look at the whole setup, recruitment, academy, first team, sell on, but all these kind of things, right? Assess everything. And at some point, somewhere down that line, he's no doubt had high level meetings, whether it was, I don't know, it probably shouldn't be with a Dermot Desmond, but we know how the club works. It potentially was with Dermot Desmond. It might have been with Ross Desmond, who might be getting more hands on. And at some point, they might have said, this is the way we need to move forward. I'm actually in the middle of listening to a really interesting book just now. I think it's called How to Win the Premier League. The guy who writes it.
The Liverpool guy?
Yes, yeah. Ian something who...
He's Rodgers.
Right, Rodgers comes out it terribly. So this guy was ex-Spurs. He was at Spurs till like 2012. The guy's at Dominic Comolli. Anyway, doesn't really matter, but he went into Liverpool at a time when Rodgers was the man and it did not work. Rodgers did not want to embrace that data-driven model, that data-driven model that all clubs seem to be adopting now. He was hell-bent on guys like Joe Allen, for example, guys that, and it's an age-old thing in football where managers, understandably, want to continue to work with players they know and trust. So Rodgers done really well at Swansea, got them to like 9th or 10th in the Premier League, something like that. And he wanted to take Joe Allen, what did he call him? The Welsh Xavi, no less, right? Put real pressure on him. He wanted to sign guys further down the track like Christian Benteke, good, big, powerful striker. By all accounts, always played well against Liverpool, but not the right guy to play for Liverpool, etc., etc. So Rodgers wanted to do the, I've seen him up close and personal, he passes the eye test and sign guys on that basis. Whereas this fella Ian, whose surname I'll really need to check in a second, they had all the data to say, I know you like Benteke, this guy's your better alternative. I know you like Joe Allen, you should go for this player instead, and so on and so forth. And I wonder if Celtic, and keeping in mind we've had big managers with big personalities, Brendan Rodgers most recently, Ange Postecoglou before that, and maybe we've not really had anyone who's really modern, forward-thinking, data-driven in the way that Wilfried Nancy might be. And on that basis, I think this could be something quite exciting.
I think the gap in the forward-thinking, data-driven is possibly in the dugout, but definitely in the boardroom. That's why I'd be cynical on Celtic having such approach, because they've shown zero appetite for modernisation of any hue for 20-odd years, you know. Just doesn't convince me. I understand that, you know, they brought in... The problem as well, you know, which backs up the fact that it's the boardroom is the problem, is because you say we might want to modernise, but then your, you know, majority owner or main owner, what's the term we use? What's the official term for?
Dominant shareholder.
Dominant shareholder, that's the one. You know, they've had plans for Maresca and whatever, and they just went, buff, you're getting Rodgers, or I've found a guy called Ange Postecoglou, or it's going to be Ronnie Dyla, or it's Neil Lennon. You know, so there's no point in the exec making plans for modernisation when he can just clatter right through and give you a manager who would not accept that.
If Celtic appoint Wilfried Nancy, it's not come from Dermot Desmond. You know the whole link through Exeter City and Paul Tisdale.
It's Paul Tisdale, which comes from Dermot Desmond. He's Desmond's man.
But he's now part of the team. He's part of the football recruitment team.
But
so
what I mean is he's got Desmond's ear. So if he's saying to Desmond, it's this guy, then it is still a Desmond thing.
No, you've got the tail wagging the dog and the other way around there. It's not like Dermot has said, I'm telling you, just go for it. So when Dermot Desmond appoints a Martin O'Neill, it's a Dermot Desmond gig. When Dermot Desmond brings back Brendan Rodgers, which is all the more baffling given how it went first time around by all accounts. Apparently there was real, you know, catastrophic fallouts between those two behind the scenes. Why bring them back into the hen house? That's another story for another day. But I think those types of appointments, Lenny and the Shivers, all that stuff, that all is driven by Dermot Desmond. But I think what Celtic have done now is appoint a football guy in Paul Tisdale and ask him to make a football decision. And I think it looks like that's what he's doing with Wilfried Nancy.
I get that with Nancy. Come back to, obviously, your man that's written about how to win the Premier League.
Ian Graham.
You got the name.
And Google told me.
Bear in mind on the back of that, now I know a lot of Liverpool fans, they like or loathe Brendan Rodgers in terms of what he spoke about at the club, how he came across. They were going through a bit of a transition. We forget he lost... and I think it was coming to the end of Gerrard's career. Jamie Carragher had retired. They also were under new ownership. New owners were looking at expanding the stadium as well. They still finished second that season, and after Rodgers left the following season, the team that he had kind of built, we're talking replacing Luis Suarez with Fabio Barini, they went far in the Europa League. They got to the final, I think, in Klopp's first season as well. A lot of those players, Brendan Rodgers players as well. So I get where you're coming from in terms of he's maybe been a bit of a nightmare to work with, but he still works well with these players, and I don't like we can't just say this is maybe why it's came to an end for Brendan Rodgers at Celtic. I don't know where that point comes from in terms of your man Ian. Like, I
don't think Brendan Rodgers is willing to fully embrace the data-driven approach. That's my feel on it. It's certainly, listen, people can change, of course they can. He certainly wasn't willing, according to Ian Graham. He was very stubborn about the whole thing, and there was some really dismissive lines by him. You know, there's all sorts of lines in it.
Yeah. I understand. I mean, Rodgers is, let's be honest, an egomaniac, but then all winners are, right? And see, for Ian Graham to come along and these ideas, it's Rodgers that gets fired, no Ian Graham.
Yeah.
So he's quite right to stick by his guns.
Of course, and Ian Graham, you know, history is written by the winners. He's telling his story of his part when Liverpool won the league. I get that, but I'm just saying, I'm interested why there's actually so much pushback. I thought you guys would be very open.
I love the idea. I just do not believe that Celtic are up for it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think on the Rodgers thing as well, like, it's not always in the data, considering he only lost one trophy in his whole time here.
Of course.
I think, like, we've got to remember that side of it too. I get where you're coming from in terms of the forward-thinking plan of how this club should operate. Yeah, I would love to see an approach like that. I would love to see the development of an analytics setup that we are aware of, is spoken highly of. I want that to be a trend and a pattern. I do think it has to be the right manager or head coach in this case, if it's going to be Wilfried Nancy. My concern is that, do we deliver that? And it's on Tisdale then. If this is all the chat is leading back to these appointments are all Paul Tisdale, it's on him. My question going back to you and to you as well, James, is why is that not happening already? And if it's Rodgers who's putting the block on that, then you call it an end. If the club wants to go down this route, then you say to Brendan Rodgers, if you're not willing to adapt to that, then that's it. Why do we continue just to drag things on and not make those decisions earlier?
It's a good point. It's also very hard to sack the guy who, even until he left, had generally won everything he had to win domestically. He won the league every time at Celtic manager. He only, was it one League Cup game he lost?
Yeah, to Kilmarnock.
He continued to win Scottish Cups. All these things. Aberdeen was the only time that he lost the Scottish. It's hard to sack that guy. So even though the club, and listen, a lot of this is guesswork, of course it is, but even though the club were maybe sitting on this data-driven model and this approach they wanted to take, you can't take it while Brendan Rodgers in situ if he's quite against it. But you can't sack him due to his success. So maybe you just need to wait till a partner of the ways. And this
but we also can't push forward if, like, only 6-7 weeks ago we released a statement saying that everything in terms of the manager and the relationship with the board is intact. And then
that is clearly false.
Stop lying.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But we talk about talk is cheap. Don't listen to what I say. Watch what I do. So if Celtic do this, don't you think it's a step in the right direction?
I think if Celtic, let's take the happy path and say they are going to do this, they will do it in such a Celtic way, which is to look at an ecosystem and say, don't need that bit, we'll just take that bit. And but many analysts, 40? No, you can have 4. They'll do all that kind of stuff and make an ecosystem into a shrunk down version and then see how it goes. And then if it doesn't work, it didn't work, and we'll go and hire Ange Postecoglou or something like that. I give Celtic zero credit because they give me no reason to give them any credit. So I don't think they'll do it. And if they do it, they'll do it in a cheap fashion.
What I think, I know it's maybe the equivalent of Scottish football embracing VAR, kind of, you know, like
we'll do VAR like technology and stuff.
Let me oppose you by taking the glass half full approach then. It would be really refreshing if, so it looks like Wilfried Nancy is going to be the guy, right? And if, like, a few Mondays ago we need to scrap this show, then so be it. But all signs are pointing towards that. It would be really refreshing and really interesting if, when he is confirmed, it's not Michael Nicholson sitting next to him, it's Paul Tisdale. That's the way it generally should be if you've got this kind of modern approach where
like Andre 3000.
Aye, with Trilby on and all that nonsense. But, you know, a head of football operations or a director of football sitting with your new head coach, that's how it should present in the modern game if that's the approach you're taking. So I think if we do see Nancy confirmed and it looks like that, then who's sitting next to him could be just as interesting.
I would agree on that. I really.
There's a lot of agree with you buts tonight.
No,
I have to say.
there's no but.
That's a very good point, however.
What a record! There's just stuff happening after our shows lately, but as well, like the Celtic are just like
Right,
release it on Monday. Release it on the Monday. No, I think that would be a massive sign in terms of this is the direction we're going on. But then the questions are going to be asked of, well, where has this guy been, and has he been sitting in the background waiting on Rodgers to depart, or has the board told him to hold off, or has the board told him to get ready, as you've maybe suggested?
Mm-hmm.
I just think that, again, that just shows like a conservative thinking, a lack of willingness to just go for it, try it out. Try it out under Rodgers. Maybe say to Rodgers, well, listen, we're still going to give you final say, but we're going to implement this guy in with your job, and this guy as well, because we feel that this is good for the structure of the club. And now I
think
get
Rodgers would have gone at that point, and that's all right.
Absolutely fine, but I think instead of it, we'll wait till he's done.
Just a cack-handed way they did it.
Do you think it could be the reason for some of the suggested disconnect behind the scenes? So, we've heard this for a time now, but apparently so many players were offered to Rodgers that he said, nope. Right? You know, he wanted his guys or not. You know, he wanted target number 1, wasn't interested in targets 2, 3 and 4, that kind of thing. And that's why, despite, I think most of us initially thinking him and Tisdale had a thing going on, you know, a kind of connection, a friendship or whatever, it seems that not so much, and that whoever Paul Tisdale and his team have presented, Rodgers has said no to. I thought it was interesting. I was watching Derek McInnes quite recently. I think he was talking to Simon Ferry about Jamestown Analytics, and he said that when he was first shown the software, he was blown away because there was players in the Scottish Premiership who he would automatically have dismissed, and the software says he would fit perfectly in your team, to the point now where they've got, did Braga come from something like the Slovakian second division, you know, like your man Braga and the guy, the other guy, Kazaridis. These guys have come from nowhere in leagues that you wouldn't even consider, but the data says, you play in this style, you want to do this, these are your guys. And I wonder if Celtic were maybe trying to present some of those type players, data-driven players, to Rodgers, and he was saying, no, I know this league, I know that player, that won't work for me.
But that's at least an example of taking an ecosystem and taking a part and not working it properly. Part of the ecosystem being Brendan Rodgers that didn't fit. So if Rodgers is the old school manager, as O'Neill would be, as Postecoglou would be, all that kind of stuff, then he's looking at a player and saying, you know, I don't like the look of him. Again, it's me that gets fired if it doesn't work out. So no thanks, go and get me the player I asked you to get me. But again, that points back to Celtic's inability to negotiate a transfer that Rodgers have asked, have been given the sight of his first choice. He was like, great, they all sound good, off you go. And they come back and go, didn't work out, Brendan, because we're shite at this. So, they've put Rodgers in, they've tried to kind of bring the ecosystem in with a glaring sore thumb that is Rodgers. So that's just not how you do it. Do it or don't do it.
Great, correct. But that's where we've been, and now let's look at where we could go. So Rodgers is gone now. Yeah. So you can adopt it with a guy who's fully into data, and Wilfried Nancy is fully into data. I'll get the name of a guy in a second, but he's got his analyst guy who goes everywhere with him. He fully embraces this world. So yeah, I agree. Celtic could have been smarter about this, and maybe a year ago they could have said to Rodgers, this isn't going to work.
We're going a different direction.
But they haven't done that, and we can't do anything about that. We are where we are. And I wonder if we're now just saying, now is the time. Now is the correct juncture for Celtic to drag themselves kicking and screaming into the modern footballing era, and Paul Tisdale will help us be part of that, and our first appointment under him will be a Wilfried Nancy, and we can start to get there. The way we've got there is not great, I agree with that, but if we get there eventually, then it's got to be a good thing.
Of course it's got to be a good thing. Any sort of progress at this point just now, Tino's a good thing for us, and I think
the banners are going up, Paddy. There's all sorts happening.
Of course, aye. That's very, very small.
Got our own banners.
It's very small in terms of what we as supporters are looking for, and that transparency that we're looking for as well. My concern is that, was Rodgers told it was a done thing back in January when we're not replacing Kyogo, or was he told it's a done thing when we're looking at Nicholas Kuhn leaving, and
a done thing in terms of his time at the club.
Yeah, and it's maybe just that he's digging his heels in and saying, I'm not going anywhere, so you have to pay me off.
I think there's a lot to come out about the last.
It won't come out.
12 months.
I think
it will. It all comes out in the wash.
I don't think it will.
Come out. But I agree. There's lots of unanswered questions. The Kyogo thing gets more and more baffling. Even though listen, it was some time ago now. It's approaching a year ago now. But it didn't make a lot of sense then, doesn't make a lot of sense now.
So I think for me, like, this is, again, if we want to be this forward-thinking football club, if we believe that everything that we're operating as is at a very high world-class standard, as our chief executive has wanted to aim and make us reach, then we need to really start acting like that and stop getting involved in pettiness, stop releasing statements from shareholders on a main club website, acting like a serious football club. If the manager's not going to get the players he wants, and if the manager's digging his heels in and it's just not causing the right setup for the board, call it a day, pay it out.
Yeah, but
He's gone now though. They can't sack him again. He's gone.
But again, and it's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's probably been build-up after build-up. If you feel that it's not going any further, and I think I'm putting two and two together here, if you're not replacing your main striker when you've got a Champions League playoff tie coming up, then that must have been the end, surely.
It was almost like a game of cat and mouse between all parties, wasn't it? Like, who will resign or be sacked first? Who will make the move between Rodgers and the club?
This is what gets me. Like, so if we take the hypothesis that, not even long term, short to medium term, Celtic wanted Rodgers out to bring this new modelling, because he knew Rodgers was never going to go for it, and that's fine. So really, the problem was the £3 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
My question is, how is that payout? How does that impact your senior execs and their bonuses, in terms of if you have to pay out and you lose, etc., etc.? Does that impact them? Because if it does, they don't make that decision. They let him sweat it and then go and resign.
I actually think, as I mentioned there, it's not just down to the fact that you'd have to pay up his £3 million contract. It is the optics of sacking the manager who wins everything before him. So that, they couldn't make that move while things were still rosy. They'd be still winning titles.
You do that the right way, because so what I want to see if Nancy's announced is, that's interesting. I like the look at him, but what I really want to see announced is the future of Celtic, this data-driven model, right? So if you're going to back Rodgers, you just control the story and you say, look, we're going in a different direction. Modern football's changed. Brendan's been fantastic at this club. He doesn't really want to work with this model we're going for. So very amicably, we've parted ways and he'll always be welcome here, blah, blah, blah. And here's what we're going to do for the next 5, 10, 25 years of Celtic. So I think you can bag him. You just sell the story, right?
Yeah, but they've not done that. So they, as I say, they can't
do
it.
But they haven't done. And yet you've got all this faith in them that they will do.
I've not got massive faith. It's just a general theory that Celtic know they need to move forward. They've watched Hearts at close quarters doing something quite interesting, quite exciting.
Clubs have been doing this. They're doing it very well. I'm not going to disagree with that, but clubs have been doing this for a long time. Celtic should be in that position as well.
And maybe they've realised that. And I'm just speculating here, but there's no doubt that, yes, the whole data-driven thing's been around for some time, and Ian Graham's been doing it for 15 years or more potentially, but it's now more prevalent than ever. And it's almost like, and it's wrong, but now you can't not do it. And Celtic have almost got to the point where, geez, we better do something. Sharon, maybe that's where we're at. We could get around that.
Loading up the old Windows 98. Get on this.
Floppy disk. Fire up the Atari ST. Let's move on a wee bit. Before we do so, as we've agreed, it's looking in all likelihood going to be Wilfried Nancy. Is there anyone you were yearning for to get the job? Is there anyone? So I'd done a profile on Kjetil Knutsen.
Yeah, got the pronunciation.
Love that.
With
there's been so many different guesses at this, by the way.
So I spoke to David Weatherston. He's an ex-St Johnstone, Falkirk, Queen of the South frontman, really decent guy. David finished his playing career out in Norway. Now he lives there with his family and his wee one. And some good friend of ours put me in touch, and I spoke to him all about it. So he's been watching Kjetil Knutsen's Bodo Glimt at close quarters and what they do. And there's a lot of excitement about him. And actually, David's really invested in whatever Knutsen's next move may be, whether it's a Celtic, he's knocked back Ajax, some other big clubs apparently. And I think a lot of us were excited about him because we'd seen him at close quarters. He tore apart Ange Postecoglou's side, albeit I think in the second leg we kind of just chucked it and played the kids and all that stuff. But it's an interesting conversation. It's, in all likelihood, it's not going to be Knutsen that gets the job as discussed, but it's well worth listening to. It's about half an hour with David, gives a good angle on it from an ex-pro's point of view, and just covers it in good detail. So that's worth checking out. But James, as I say, whether it was Knutsen, Nicky Hyen, Kieran McKenna, anyone else on your radar, is there anyone that you feel that it would niggle at you that we don't go for?
Hyen was my first choice from the get-go.
At Bruges.
Yeah, just given what he's done, and he's worked under a modern data-driven structure. I would much rather have had these execs come with him if he was to come. But the Knutsen one's interesting because obviously, done amazing things. His made that club what it is, really.
Did you hear the bit where he gets 10% of
Aye,
transfer fees?
Does he?
Yeah, I was listening to the end.
He's
10% of.
He's agreed a deal.
No wonder he's not
exit.
going to go.
Aye.
Yeah.
But he's also, it's as cosy like, it's a nice life. I mean, coming here, I thought quite early on when it was rumoured with him, coming here from that cosy small town Norway to Glasgow to the, relentless pressure, demands, media, this, that, and the next thing, fans can't sit in a restaurant. I just don't know, like, never been exposed to it. I'm not saying Nicky Hyan has, but it's quite unique, Glasgow.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you get someone like, this is, I suppose, interesting, you get Ange Postecoglou's, Martin O'Neill's, Brendan Rodgers, they can handle all that because they are that kind of character. Nancy seems like he can hold his own
personality.
Yeah, big personality. So, no, Hyan was the only one that I was really worried about. But I like what he been on to. But I will say, MLS and defence, as they call it over there, they don't do defence. Watch some of the goals, man. It's just like, and you get just have a shot and goal. So I'm assuming he knows that isn't going to be the same over here, where it is all defence.
I would hope so. I mean, I've mentioned at the top of the piece, and it was just to provide balance. He's never managed out with the MLS, so he's obviously, I'll give you his CV, right? So, Montreal manager, took over in March 2021 from Thierry Henry. He'd been part of his team there, and prior to that, he'd been in the academy. So he was initially in Montreal's academy from 2011 to 2016. He then gets involved in the first team from 2016 until March 21, and then he takes a big job himself. He set all sorts of club records during that time, including away wins and points in the season, various things like that. I think there was a real tension between him and the Montreal manager. There's a story that I won't get into just now, but Hamish covered it well on Celtic AM this morning, where basically the owner tried to get into the dressing room after a loss, and Nancy says absolutely not, and there was all sorts of tension. But by the by, but he's not the yes man I think that some people are thinking, who's this guy for the MLS? Oh, the club will just bring him in and control him. I don't think Nancy's that kind of guy at all. He then goes to Columbus Crew and takes a job there as head coach December 2022. Finishes third in the league and goes on to win the MLS Cup in his first full season. Just to explain quickly the way it works there, and Paddy, I think you maybe know a wee bit more about this as well, but you've got the East and West conferences out in the States, and I think it's the top 9 in each then go into the MLS Cup. So 18 teams go into the MLS Cup, and it's like first plays 9th and second plays 8th and third place blah, blah, blah. And you end up with a knockout type thing. So just because you win the league as such, initially you then go into beyond that
kind of stuff.
Yeah, so he basically came third, which qualifies him for the MLS Cup, which he then went on to win in his first full season. So massive achievement. He also reaches the CONCACAF Champions Cup final, and he's named MLS Coach of the Year on the 20th of November 2024, which will be a year ago from this week. So it's a whirlwind time. Not a lot of time, James, in management at the top level, but you can only do what you can do, and if you're on the up, you're on the up. And I agree, MLS isn't the best standard, although you'll have heard the stats last week.
I looked at this.
Right, all right, well, hold on. Let me tell the stat first before you dismiss it. Opta have provided stats on the kind of gradings of the various leagues across the world. English Premier League, as expected, is first. You've got La Liga, Serie A, blah, blah, blah. You've got the MLS in 10th. You've got the Scottish Premiership in 39th. What's your chat on that?
You need to provide context. If you're going to take, so what Opta's taken is stats and pure stats, and you need to have context of what kind of league it is. What Celtic are playing against mostly defensive teams. American teams are playing against poor defensive teams. What quality they play in Europe, how many games they play. There's none of that taken into account. A load of pish, in my opinion. The stats are interesting. Are interesting, but there's no way in this world that Scotland is 39th to the MLS is 10th. That's just a nonsense.
I don't think it's as far apart in terms of.
That's what I mean. I think
they're a lot closer. I do, but I do think they're close in terms of the quality.
I just don't like that as a broad. Yeah, I'm not saying you're doing it, but Opta saying no, that's football now. That's 39, that's 10th, and that's the only stat.
Well, what you've got, so you'll have seen, I'm sure, Paul John Dykes having out with Jamie O'Hara, who had the audacity to say that Stockport, who are currently top of League One,
he's a wild, but right? he's just
shock stuff, right? So he talks sport nonsense, to be honest with you. But so these stats that tell you that the Scottish League is the 39th, blah blah blah. You've got 2 to 3 decent sides if you want to look at Celtic, Hearts, and maybe Rangers if you want to give them their place there. But there's a lot of dross under that.
But that's the problem. We can't carry that rucksack for them.
No, I know,
you know?
but just as a league, if you
Yeah.
look at the league as a whole, yes, Celtic are top dogs and spend well and compete in Europe and all that stuff sometimes, but there's so much poor stuff in them. When you look at how, every year, somebody like a St Mirren or a whatever, Hibs even, get into Europe and crash out in the early qualifying rounds. It happened again this season.
I'd say maybe in America it's a bit more equitable that 1st and 10th are closer than 1st and 10th in Scotland, in Holland, in Spain, in Italy,
So the MLS is designed to be competitive. So, amongst other chats last week, I spoke to John O'Rourke. John is a Dublin-born coach. He's been in Philadelphia for 25 odd years in that whole coaching world. He actually attended an event with Wilfried Nancy 2-3 weeks ago. So John was able to provide some really good insights. You'll get that on our Patreon channel right now. And he talks about, so there's such a thing as the designated player, for example. You're only allowed 3 designated players. Remember back in the day in Scottish football, you could only sign like 3 foreigners. It's kind of like that. It's so that you can't go and buy a dozen Lionel Messis. You can buy one Lionel Messi and 2 others to go with them, but you can't fill your team full of these guys. You need to have so many youth players. You need to have so many homegrown players. And it's designed to keep the equilibrium, to keep the balance so that no one team will go and win 9 in a row out there. That will never happen. No. You've got teams, he mentioned a team, maybe San Diego or something. He said they came out of nowhere and blew the league away this season, for example. It's designed to do that. It's designed to be really competitive. So people have tried to dig out Wilfried Nancy's win rate as something to throw back at him. It's actually quite a strong win rate based on how competitive the league is. It's just the setup there.
But see the amount of context we just put in that in 2 minutes that Opta didn't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It does count.
Yeah, I mean,
of course it does.
I've just taken the Opta headline, to be fair. There might be more context.
Yeah,
somewhere.
I'm wondering what else. They're surely, especially when League 2 are coming up close to or above us in the ranking on that as well. I'm assuming there must be to do with monetary values must come into that as well.
It's a lot to do with XG and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll tell you what, let me try and dig into Opta and how they got to those results, and I'll bring that back to the table next week. We'll do that.
It's interesting to get somebody to come on who's statty. Maybe Al Morrison kind of thing.
Alan from Celtic by Numbers might be a shout. Paddy, just to kind of sum up in this wee section though, I've kind of given the CV of Wilfried Nancy from Montreal through Columbus Crew and the various achievements there. This isn't someone who's juked about the English Premier League that we know well, or even the Championship, or even anywhere as mentioned outside the MLS. What do you think generally of his CV?
I think it's a fair appointment in terms of where we are at as a club just now. I think it's a very, very difficult position that we're in at the moment to try and attract someone with a high calibre, and include Knutson and our man for Club Brugge, what's his surname again? Hayen. I think that they would look at Celtic as a model at the moment and say, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I think that we are where we are just now, and if Nancy feels he can come in and work with that, and he's aware of what Tisdale does, he's aware of the setup, then yeah, it makes sense on paper. It makes sense. Still not happy we're in that position, but if he gets the job, I'll back him like I back every manager that gets into that seat.
And I think even though the pending appointment of Nancy has split opinion, most folk are saying, but if he's given the job, we'll back him. And I think that's got to be the way, isn't it?
Always.
If he gets the gig, you've got to back him. Just to explain that link as well, just before I forget the whole Exeter City thing. So his long-time assistant is, I can't remember his first name, Ampadu. That'll come back to me.
Not Nathan, is it? No, that's a player.
Ethan Ampadu is his son. So Ethan Ampadu's dad is Wilfried Nancy's number 2. He himself had a decent career down south. He played for Republic of Ireland, 21s 4 times. He's played for
Arsenal,
West Brom, Arsenal as a kid, blah, blah, blah. And Exeter City. He's got 150 games under his belt for Exeter City, I believe, at a time when Tisdale was there. So that's a link. You know, there's something there to connect them, and that's why we're now speaking to Ampadu and Nancy, etc., etc. Ethan Ampadu is captain of Leeds United, so there's, you know, decent football and pedigree within the family, but that's just to explain that link. What I have watched, I've been sent loads of different articles and videos, and I appreciate everyone that's kind of put them to us, and I'm sure you guys have, you know, done much the same. One video which is doing the rounds, which I thought was good, the video is headed "The Most Interesting Team Outside of Europe Right Now." It's a video from May of last year by a guy called Jake Landau, some sort of MLS expert. That's his channel. He opens the video by saying Wilfried Nancy will be in a UEFA Champions League final in the next 10 years. And this was a year and a half ago, so there's 8.5 years to go.
You're telling me there's a chance?
There is a chance. But he then goes on to talk about various interesting things, and he talks about, first of all, the identity of Wilfried Nancy's Columbus Crew side, and he said it's built on three main principles. Number one, they're a possession-based side, but don't confuse that for possession's sake. Basically, it's possession with a purpose. That's the thing behind that. Secondly, they adopt an intelligent pressing game, which is very much part of the modern game. And thirdly, they're big on adopting what they call a team fit approach, i.e. every player fits perfectly into their own specific role in the team. And we've experienced issues with that for guys like, actually right now, for Benjamin Negren. Does he fit in this Celtic side? He might fit in the new Celtic side under Nancy. Doesn't fit in it right now.
But that sounds an awful lot like Bodo Glimt. Like all three of those things mentioned sounds like the same kind of, like the similar concept.
And actually, none of them sound like rocket science. I'm not dismissing, there's a lot of work goes into making those three principles what they are, but they're kind of things that you should be adopting already as a club, aren't you?
Yeah, we've probably seen bits of it from Ange and Rodgers, but then I always think Rodgers' issue is that he wants such a high calibre player because he's overloading them with so much information that when he doesn't get it, he shrinks into that kind of model where you just keep the ball. I was out with my pal Martin Friday there, and he's like, just Daniel comes in and goes, just put it in the box a bit more. There's good players in there. Just get it in the box. I mean, as it was getting towards the end with Rodgers, it was like 87% possession in the first half and 3 touches in the opposition box.
Yeah.
So this kind of stuff, I'd need to see it in more detail, but it should be taking you further up the park quicker. If you look at the difference between Ange to Rodgers to what we might be coming, Ange's pace on getting up the pitch, and Rodgers, to when he first came back, to be fair, his pace and getting up the pitch and into the opposition box, that was the whole point. So that kind of structure drives you towards that, as long as it's not possession for psychotic possession's sake.
Yeah. You say you need to see it in more detail. You might be seeing it in Paisley on Saturday night if all goes well and Nancy gets the job. That could be his debut, St Mirren, 8 o'clock kickoff. Just a bit more detail in from that video. So, as we've heard a few times now, Nancy generally plays a 3-4-3 or a 3-4-2-1. But crucially, again, he can be adaptable depending on the opposition. And listen, we know from Rodgers and Ange particularly, hell-bent, plan A and all that stuff, and if it doesn't work, do plan A better. Stubborn in their own way. It's Ange's big thing. It's potentially the thing that cost him dearest at Spurs and maybe to a lesser extent at Forest, but not willing to change regardless. I'll set up the same way against Wraith Rovers in the League Cup as Real Madrid in the Champions League. That's Ange.
Because then the Wraith Rovers and Real Madrid go, we know how to set up against you.
Exactly that.
So predictable.
But for all the good stuff you can say about Ange, and there's lots of good stuff, his lack of adaptability, I think it cost him. Celtic done nothing in Europe under Ange. We never, bent the principles for anybody there. Finally, or nearly finally, Nancy's also described as a players coach, with many of the players under his guidance during his time, most recently at Columbus Crew, recording career high stats. He gets the best out of players. It's so important for any Celtic coach, given the money issues. We can't spend top dollar, but can we buy and improve players or make the existing group better? And it was always Rodgers' big thing. And in his second spell, it didn't really happen. People ask the question, who's improved this time around under Rodgers?
Couldn't improved and
then unimproved. Yeah. So things like that. And just the last thing in the video, the last comment is that he's a very personable guy, very popular in the community, and by all accounts, just a likeable guy. Right. So it's a bonus that he's a likeable guy, but that's where we're at. I mean, does any of that information, James, get you more excited about the potential of him coming in?
No, I mean, it just circles back to the start, really. I like him as a character. I hope he's been forthright in his interview process in the structure that he needs. I wonder if Knutson was, and it didn't quite match up.
Yeah.
Because if Nancy comes in and is expected to run the same model as, Rodgers and Ange and stuff like that, it just won't work. And, I would really love it to work for him if he does come in. So as long as he's been forthright to say, these are the things that I need in place, and if he wasn't given positive answers on that, he's told me to stick it.
This is a new data-driven Celtic we're talking about here.
You made up in your head.
It's a tough one for him though, when it coming into it. Like, I think, obviously you're saying we'll see this new look Celtic come Saturday night. I want him in the door straight away, absolutely. But was it 11 games in 38 days?
Is that what got ahead of us?
Got ahead of us,
right?
And I think that's...
You're not on Broncos.
Yeah, but
you're in game 39.
But you're not on the training ground as much as you want, and trying to implement a style such as that, it's not going to happen overnight. So straight away, a draw, a bad result puts us back a bit further. Pressure's on the guys straight away. We had the debate when I was away in Cortlair with two of my good friends Stevie and Barry, and one of the debates we had was, does he survive if he doesn't win the league? And I said yes. They said no.
I say yes.
I think if you're doing something different and you're making what would be quite a notable change, then you've got to accept that it might not hit the ground running. But if you believe in it, you've got to back it. And it depends how he loses.
Yeah,
if he puts Negrin in at centre half or something, then all right, fair enough.
But I think there's let's hope we don't ever have to consider it, but there's a scenario where he fails to win the league but keeps his job, I think.
Yeah.
But let's start on a positive note and hope that he'll start.
Of course, but it's
a good question.
Needs to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
I think it's a tough stretch.
It is a good question, and we'll revisit it. What we'll do, I'll link to that video that I mentioned. Let me just get the title of it again. The most interesting team outside of Europe right now. So I'll link to that video on YouTube and also on our Patreon. And as I've mentioned on Patreon, you can get that John O'Rourke interview talking all about Wilfried Nancy. You can also hear the chat from David Weatherston talking all about Shato Knutson. And you can check it all out at patreon.com/Celtic Exchange. Question for you.
Yes.
Do you like quizzes and or trivia questions?
Love them.
Good, because we've got one for
I like
you.
easy ones.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at last week's 5 in a row first, and then I'll give you a trivia question which I've set for today. But question number 1, Jemai Simpson-Pusey made his Celtic debut against Kilmarnock. What number was he wearing? What's his shirt number? It is number 4. Don't think anybody got that. After 11 games this season, league games, Celtic have conceded the fewest goals in the Scottish Premiership. How many have they conceded?
Is it
8?
It is 8. I think James got that right.
Got the rest right.
The 4-0 win over Kilmarnock was our second win over Killie this season. The other was the 2-1 win at Rugby Park, where Ian Atchell scored the late penalty winner on the day. Who opened the scoring for Celtic that day? Dies Maeda. A wee glancing diving header type thing. And number 4, after the international break, we play St Mirren and Paisley on Saturday night. And then in matchday 5 of the Europa League, who do we face away from home?
It's Feyenoord.
It's Feyenoord, and Paddy will be there. And question number 5, interim first team coach Mark Fotheringham only played 3 times for Celtic before moving on in 2003. Can you name any of the other teams he played with during a checkered career before retiring in 2016? Dundee, Freiburg, Norwich, Ross County, Dundee United, Fulham, and a few others into the bargain.
Does Fozzie get to stay?
There's a question.
For the
I like him a lot.
I think a lot of folks like him, and I think a lot of folks are pleased with what Sean Maloney's bringing to the party.
Yeah,
And
same.
it's just a very quick aside. I think a guy like Sean Maloney, who seems a real student of the game and a real modern thinking progressive coach as well, I think that role of player pathway manager is kind of wasted on him at the moment. It's an important role for
He's
Celtic.
showing that.
There's clearly an issue in terms of bringing through the next KT, Callum McGregor, James Forrest, but I don't think Sean Maloney has to go and do that. I think someone else can do that and he can keep his coaching skills elsewhere. Before I forget, I do have a trivia question for today. And I mentioned...
While I forget.
And it is a tricky one, as mentioned. So, if appointed, Wilfried Nancy will become our first French manager. But since Stéphane Mahé joined Celtic in the summer of 1997, how many permanent French players have Celtic had on their books? I'm not going to spend time on it. I'll give you a pen and paper. You can think about it, you lads, during the rest of the show. I'll tell you the answer after we finish recording. But for everyone else, as always, we'll bring the answer in next week's show. But first 5 listeners to get in touch with the right answers will win a month free of our Patreon. Just email me on tino@thecelticexchange.com. Patreon is the only place where you can enjoy our additional bonus episodes each and every week, including pre- and post-match shows for every Celtic game, plus the daily every midweek morning, plus our exclusive members-only Celtic chat community. Just to re-stress the question, if appointed, Nancy will become our first French manager, but since Stéphane Mahé joined in summer 97, how many permanent French players have Celtic had on their books? So it doesn't include loan signings, Jeremy Aladair, for example.
Does include Stefan Bonis.
It doesn't include Stefan Bonis, who never made a first-team appearance. And it doesn't include Didier Agat, who was born in Reunion Island, which, according to Wikipedia, is an overseas department of France, but not an actual Frenchness of it all. Anyway.
Thanks. Our local explorer.
Okay.
Giving us the story.
Send your answers to me, to tino@thecelticexchange.com, if you think you know, and you can win a month free, as mentioned, of Patreon. Check all the Patreon stuff out at patreon.com/Celtic Exchange. There's a very important event happening on Friday of this week. It's the Celtic AGM. It takes place on Friday coming, 21st November at 10:30am. And amongst all the noise of the manager stuff and what's going on, it's kind of fallen into the background, hasn't it, Paddy? But are you expecting any big headlines from this one? It could be quite explosive given what's taken place over the last few months.
I honestly don't know, Tino. My heart hopes that there is change, and I hope there is more of a vision, kind of put by the club. But it's just, I could potentially see the dominant shareholder doubling down and not giving much away and keeping the cards close to his chest on Friday, and saying that everything's hunky-dory.
I know, that would be the real frustration. Nothing to see here. Business as usual. We vote all these guys back in. Celtic continue to win trophies, off up the road. Is that what you think will happen? Is that most likely?
It's what I would do. I would hold tight in terms of externally. Looks like we're backing everyone and we're not letting fan pressure dictate what we do here. But within 3 to 6 months, I'll have changed my full exec board and all the Neds will be cycled out and done.
I think it's in the Dermot Desmond playbook not to be seen to kowtow to fan pressure, even though he maybe feels there's changes to be made. Making it now would seem like he's buckled, basically.
Yeah, I think the only one, because it gives you just a bit of a mess from a corporate admin point of view, is he's probably got 2 easy ones in Tom Allison and Brian Wilson, that they're not adding anything to the party apart from Andy nod and dog votes, which is, if you want full control, that's useful to you. But if you wanted it to look like he was giving the fans something, just take the 2 of them out, because if you want to go and replace Nicholson and Duffy, Nicholson and Mackay and stuff like that, then that could be done through the year. But once you vote in your Neds and stuff, you kind of tend to keep it until the next AGM, otherwise it looks a bit unstable. So take them out, bring some fresh blood in there. But I would definitely be 100% targeting my chief exec and my CFO, unfortunately, because they've just shown, poor performance. The fact that Desmond has had to, as I said before, lower himself to exec level, he'll be raging at that. So he might outwardly present a united front, but he'll be thinking differently in the background. I heard some stuff today that there's we're coming into busiest time of the year for the retail store, and they're slashing prices.
Well, it's not rumour. They've basically, is it a 30% discount on the away and third kit or something?
Yeah.
And I don't know for sure, but I read a report that said that's unprecedented, that they would discount them before Christmas. I don't know, maybe they always do this with those kits, but it's that's the headline that's basically indicated that maybe the Not Another Penny campaign is having an impact across the board.
Potentially. It is coming round to the Black Friday marketing side of things as well.
When is Black Friday?
2 weeks or something?
A week on Friday, a week on Friday. So I'm not reading too much into that. I think we'll only really find out the true answer in that when we get the results next year of how it's done. But I'm all for that campaign. Absolutely continue it. It does signify that that they are listening in a sense to what is going on. Are they willing to change? I don't know. I'm with you. I think his appearance at a game lately, the idea that he's been in and about the club, I think lately we need to think that he's not happy at certain people. But do you think, that's my question to you guys, do you think we're going to hear anything on Friday on that? I don't think we will. I think it'll be all very...
Nothing to see here.
Yeah, pretty much.
The one thing, you've got Michael Nicholson and Mackay, performing poorly, but it's because of the dysfunction by the presence of Desmond and putting the shadow of Peter Lawwell there on top of Michael Nicholson. They're not free to do their job anyway, so, I'm certainly saying nothing personally against him. I just don't think you can function in such a dysfunctional company. Yeah. Well, who knows what goes.
So you mentioned... Sorry to interrupt, and I know it's very hard to say no to this. You can still sign the contract and take the job, though, for those two. Because I think, I kind of get where you're coming from. They're not really getting any wiggle room. They're getting told exactly what to do. I don't think they're acting off their own accord. I think every decision will be getting looked over. But then at the same time, they're completely in the firing line as well. So it's a difficult one. But you surely know what you're getting into.
Yeah, I mean...
Been a long time.
Michael Nicholson, Chris Mackay in seriously high-paying jobs, I think maybe 800k and 600k respectively, or something kind of close to those figures. But there is no doubt that to offer a defence, they're hampered on 2 fronts. You've got the overreaching Dermot Desmond, who on any given decision he doesn't like, he will just put the big hand round and say, we're doing this, we're doing that, he's your new manager, that he goes, she stays, blah, blah, blah. And you've also got the spectre of your old boss hanging around. There's no, and take away any personal feelings anyone has towards Peter Lawwell. Just the situation is The former CEO is now the chairman and is therefore looking over the shoulder of the current CEO saying, I wouldn't do it like that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't quite do that. This is how we negotiate on transfers. Remember how I taught you how to do this? Blah, blah,
His
blah.
legacy.
It's exactly that. And it's almost human nature from Peter Lawwell's point of view. You know, I've kind of read into a wee bit this in terms of corporate governance. Very naturally, he will be looking to protect his legacy. And given maybe what he absolutely feels is best advice, but what it doesn't do is allow Michael Nicholson to steer his own ship. And that's been the case pretty much since Michael Nicholson came in.
If I was in Michael Nicholson's shoes when I came in, the first thing I would want to do is change the culture, because the Peter Lawwell culture bleeds throughout the club, every single department. And that is, you know, an accountant's safe, don't stick your head above the parapet, don't get too crazy, just keep it steady. Whereas Celtic needs to move. I mean, there's no culture of excellence in the departments at Celtic. There are excellent people and excellent execs in there, but there's no culture of excellence. So even if you take Peter Lawwell out and he never goes back to Parkhead again, the culture needs to change.
But as we know, Don Mackay tried to do that, and Don Mackay's gone.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. So Michael Nicholson's probably thought, but if I do that, I'm gone.
But we are now, what, Don Mackay's 5 years ago, right?
Well, yeah.
More than.
And
we are in the same position we were needing Don Mackay or add Don Mackay now. So
Yeah, agreed.
Don Mackay was heading in the right direction.
True. Is there a possibility that the strong rumours that Peter Lawwell steps down will happen at AGM? I think there is a chance that happens,
Maybe.
that announcement is made.
Hassle, you know.
That's got to be my question on that. Right, again, I'm just going to stress that it's not a personal thing at all. But Peter Lawwell, he's made many millions, you know, very successful, financially stable, financially well off. Do he and his family need the hassle? You know, going home and reading the headlines and online and all that stuff. Like, maybe just step back and enjoy retirement, no?
Yeah, and you know, I said a few weeks ago that when Peter Lawwell became chief exec, it was essential to have a Peter Lawwell type as chief exec to come in and fix the cash burn at Celtic. Come in and did that. Unfortunately, it stayed around and became a culture at Celtic. So he's got a lot to look back on and say, you know, that was me. I steadied the ship. We were in real danger in Celtic in 2003 under Alan McDonald and stuff. So I think he's done a great job then, but then it's the continued kind of culture and the missteps and the control, which again is Dermot Desmond. You know, it's Dermot Desmond working through Peter Lawwell. But now, you know, I mean, I just think the coming back as chairman was a horrendous move. Everyone should have stopped when it stopped, and that was it. But we need some fresh blood in there, fresh eyes, and just a nice someone that the fans look to as a bit, you know, and it wouldn't be, but say it was Martin O'Neill took over as chairman and goes, right, good, that's that sorted. He's a good guy and we all like him, you know. That he splits the room too much, Peter Lawwell, and why bother, you know, from his own point of view.
And I know that the chairman role at Celtic is non-exec, but, well, on paper. No, I think for the most part it is non-exec, but the appointment of Ian Bankier for 11 years
Horrendous.
Blew my mind.
Horrendous.
The worst culture fit, you know, at least for what Celtic should be, and how he hung around for so long. He is not the kind of guy that should be involved with Celtic. And then for very different reasons, Peter Lawwell, well, obviously Celtic minded and all that stuff, but he should never have come back either. And it's been two really poor appointments in terms of the chairman role. And as I say, you know, they're not involved in the day-to-day, but it is a figurehead and it is an important role when there's the optics of all involved. And Celtic have got that wrong in the last two appointments, and I'd like to see a freshen up there.
Yeah, it's just what James said, it's aware of the culture and not wanting to change that. If you keep Desmond away, then it's working, right? And I think keeping Desmond away is continuing to build that bank balance, but actually what fans want is to see progress on the park. Now we can speak about the trophies we've won. We've done excellent over the last 25 years.
We haven't won.
But we can speak about the trophies we haven't won, as you've just said.
Or get anywhere near.
And you can speak about just the absolute disaster which has been European football,
Yep.
you know, and that's what fans want. Fans want us to be successful. We all speak about Seville so highly and what an incredible moment that was for the club in trying to win the UEFA Cup. We came very, very close. Not seen anything like it since. Fans want to be excited. We don't want to look at high balances.
Yeah, 100%. Just to round off in the AGM chat, so we might see a change at the chairman position. We might not. We might see Ross Desmond being more vocal and more of a play. By all accounts, he's ready to get his hands
I wonder
dirty.
if he goes in.
So
I mean, he's already on the board, doesn't he?
no, he's just a proxy.
Is it?
I had high hopes he would come in as a modern Desmond, but I'm hearing he's a younger Desmond.
Right.
That's that.
Just like his dad without the moustache. We'll see, but I think there is a suggestion that he's going to get more active, and by all accounts, he's big Celtic fan, and maybe he'll come in and do things a bit differently from his dad and approach more modern ways. Who knows, right? But it's just the great unknown. That's exactly it. And the other suggestion is that we might see the removal of guys like Tom Allison and Brian Wilson. I mean, that would be an easy one, wouldn't it? You need a couple of fall guys, you need a couple of patsies. We used to can roll out of town.
Joey Tribbiani's.
Yeah, so we'll see. Last question on it though, and we need to kind of head towards the end of the piece here. If you had a magic wand and the club could make one big announcement at the AGM, what would it be for each of you?
Modern data-driven structure, full ecosystem, no piecemeal.
We've got one. We've got one.
Piecemeal, full ecosystem. Tell me how you came up with it.
I don't need to show my workings.
And tell me how you're going to implement it, and tell me what we can expect over the next 5, 10, 15 years.
So yeah, and on that, so you're very much into the prospect of this whole data-driven approach, but you want this holistic, not half-arsed way of doing it. Let's do it, but let's do it properly.
The Celtic way.
Yeah, let's do it properly. Okay, wish granted. Yourself?
A serious acknowledgement of transparency with the fans, and I think that's got to be key.
That is some wand you've got there, brother. Okay, we'll see. We'll see if your wish comes to fruition. Couple of things. We've not really had much time at all to discuss it, but Ireland's performance in 1 over Hungary last night was absolutely incredible.
Amazing.
Can I confess my blunder to the people out there? So was it 2-1? I was like, this is going nowhere, and I was kind of cosy, had the heating on. I thought I'd just go for a wee 5 minutes, and I woke up after the final whistle.
A wee nap and missed history.
They've asked for my passport back.
And
fair enough.
You've not heard that.
Just chopped up.
Did you catch it?
I did. Just absolute bedlam at the end. They hung in. I don't think they deserved to win the game.
Doesn't matter.
But no, absolutely. They ground the result out. Interestingly enough, watching it on RTE.
RTE2.
DTR Hammond.
Aye,
doing the punditry.
German international.
Aye. But apparently he's been doing RTE's Champions League coverage.
Right.
So they were like, do you want to come in and do this?
It was him and Kevin Doyle.
Kevin Doyle. Aye. Great video.
The studio, wasn't he?
Great video with Doyle running about the studio. Aye. The videos after it have been amazing. And then just seeing Big Scalesy leading the boys into the pub last night as well.
I mean, just watching it. So I watched it in full. No naps, James. Watched it in full. It was just... we've all seen kind of some big comebacks and stuff, but it was, I don't know, there was just something so different about it, and it's like nothing you've ever seen before. I mean, they went 2-2, and listen, Troy Parrott, 5 goals in 2 games.
Incredible.
His second goal is class. The third goal, Liam Scales deserves all the credit going for keeping that alive. He's just up and he's straining every muscle in his neck to get to it.
He's not favourite.
He makes a brilliant header after it as well. The ball, his last attack, he lumped the ball in.
Incredible by Liam Scales. There was nearly a dream debut for Johnny Kenny. He found himself in at the back post, done everything right. Keeper's cut it with a bingo wing. Do you see it?
Aye.
And listen, I'm sure everyone's seen most of it, if not the highlights by now, but it's an incredible moment. The celebration, the knee slide, I found it hugely emotional. I thought it was brilliant and delighted for Ireland, and we'll see where they get in the playoffs. But to do what they've done against Portugal, and then doing that is one thing, and then you could have faltered, and well, it was a good shot, lads.
Got close.
To follow up and get the win you needed against Hungary. Incredible. We need to give a shout out as well, actually, to mates of ours, James. So Graham Byrne in Dublin, who was at the Portugal game, along with Brian Bradley and Mickey Kelly, and the latter two were then in Hungary. They were there last night. They will never forget that. We've not spoken to them much since, but we'll get their chat. But credit to the lads and to everyone who travelled out there for that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the atmosphere out there looked amazing, and I think there was some kind of flight extensions and stuff going on, and people just staying for the party. So, and then obviously they'll be rebooking for playoffs and all sorts of holidays going in.
Yeah, brilliant stuff.
You also need to hope that it's a Celtic reunion for this World Cup, and that both Scotland and Ireland get there. Aye. I'm hopeful that Scotland go and do the business tomorrow night and win, and let Ireland get the easy game against Denmark in the playoffs.
Scotland have basically got a cup final of their own tomorrow against Denmark, and that was crazy as well. We won't get in detail here, but they were up and down on Saturday night as well, and then anyway, we'll see. But they've got a massive game, so if they can take care of Denmark, Scotland go to the first World Cup since 1998.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Took on Brazil on the opening day on the 10th of June 1998.
Morocco, and
Tom Boyd get the winner for Brazil.
Craig Gordon was 15
Was he? Anyway, let's move on. We know that Celtic's next game is Saturday night. They're away in Paisley, 8 o'clock kickoff, and we'll cover that full count at the kickoff show on the Patreon on Friday. St Mirren kind of languishing a wee bit, actually. They're ninth in the table, but decent side, as we know, under Steve Robinson. They'll be well up for that. But Paddy, lots covered. Wilfried Nancy stuff, some Ireland stuff just there, AGM stuff, and various bits and bobs in between. Your final comments for the week?
I think when we spoke at the end of the international break, it just came at a nice time, just settle us down a bit. Ideally, you want to see a manager come in and just be ready for the training of that week and get to know his players. But I think under the Martin O'Neill, Sean Maloney, safe hands for the game on Saturday night if it is going to be those two. And I'm pretty sure they'll give a good handover if it is Wilfried Nancy that takes the lead. And all the best to them, and all the best to the caretakers and whatever they want to do as well. I know Maloney's still with Celtic, but Martin O'Neill, big thanks if it is the end. Yeah,
and it's not the last of Martin O'Neill at Celtic. We'll cover that moving forward next week and beyond. James, final word goes to you.
Yeah, something similar. You know, I've been quite relaxed through the kind of hiring process because Martin O'Neill's here. You know, and there's such a steadiness there, and Sean Maloney's, you know, we've got to see a bit of his talent as well. So I've been really good for that. But as things are going on, and you're kind of going, right, okay, let's kind of get it done and let us see what the future is, because I'm just really excited about the data-driven model that you've announced for Celtic now.
Love it.
And you're right to be excited. So
all in.
See, the Celtic future is here. So that's all on this latest episode of Celtic Exchange Weekly. Thanks to James and Paddy for being here this week, but most importantly, thanks to you for continuing to back us on Celtic Exchange. Remember to check out patreon.com/Celtic Exchange for exclusive access to all our extra content. And if you think you know the answer to this week's trivia question, then send it in to tino@thecelticexchange.com and you could win a month of that Patreon for free. But all that aside, have a brilliant week. We'll see you back soon for the next one.